So today we're going to talk about negotiation strategies. So with that, when we think of negotiations, what are some things in real estate where we would have to negotiate? What are some examples of that?
Purchase price.
Purchase price, yep. What else?
Roof.
Roof, absolutely, 100%.
Just about everything I want to say.
Low appraisal.
Low appraisal inspections, absolutely, yeah, 100%. I mean, those are all great examples. Even things like, how do we market ourselves? How do we advertise ourselves? How do we put things in our calendar? Where do you want to go on a date on Saturday night? All these things are negotiations. When you have something that you want to do and another party has something that they want to do, essentially now you have a point where we need to negotiate a potential outcome. And that's really the whole point of negotiations, is trying to figure out a potential outcome. So with that, there are 5 potential outcomes with any negotiation. You don't have to know exactly the definitions, but essentially what they are, a competing one is I win, you lose. An accommodating one is you lose, I win. A compromising one is where sometimes you win, sometimes I win, sometimes you lose, sometimes I lose. Collaboration, which is really what we're trying to get to, is a win-win scenario. And then avoiding negotiation is a lose-lose scenario. So when you're thinking about negotiations, whether it's a low appraisal, whether it's a roof, whether it's how do you market your stuff, you want to think of, okay, what are the potential outcomes that I want from this scenario? Is this something where if we have a low appraisal price, is there a way that we can both win in this scenario? Maybe we renegotiate somewhere in the middle, or maybe an avoiding negotiation strategy instead of a low appraisal. Now we cancel the contract and nobody wins from that. What outcome do we want from the negotiation? Because really understanding what we want is really the whole point. If we know what we want as the desired outcome of the negotiations, we can better understand what sort of tactics and what sort of strategies we want from that. So with that, there are 5 strategies that at least I want to talk about tonight. There are several more strategies, but really these are the big ones, and a lot of it is going to encompass what you're going to find on a day-to-day negotiation tactic. You might find that you're actually doing some of these right now and you have no idea there was an actual name to what you were doing. But some of these you'll find are something that you're going to do in everyday life. Some of them you're going to really think, okay, what might be an appropriate scenario to do a red herring, bait and switch type of negotiation. You might not say it out loud. You're not going to tell the other party, hey, we're going to do a bait and switch scenario. But maybe as you're thinking about it, this might be the best scenario to move forward with a negotiation. Any questions on that? Cool. So with that, before we go to some strategy, we got to know some basics. So no matter what strategy in negotiation, whether it's a scientifically proven one, whether it's just one that you're going to make up off the top of your head, you're going to want to do some basics beforehand. And so with these basics, they're really going to help reinforce your position in the negotiations and really help reinforce what you want out of the negotiations. And so really, however you do your negotiations, whatever thing that you are negotiating for, you want to keep in mind these basic of negotiation, because they're really going to help you out. And so let's kind of dive a little bit deeper in that. So doing your homework, that's something that I repeat over and over and over again, doing your homework. And by that, I mean know what you want, know what the other person wants, and know the rules of the game. So let's take a real estate transaction, for example. And let's say you're a buyer's agent and you're negotiating with the seller's agent. You have to know what your party wants. What are the goals of your particular buyer? What's their budget? What's their monthly mortgage payment? Where do they want to be? All of these things you have to know as a buyer's agent to understand, okay, what home can I present to my buyer? What financing is appropriate? What's the appropriate price? Terms and things like that. What are they willing to give up in their negotiations? The more you know about the party you're representing, the better you're going to be in your negotiations. Same thing too with knowing the goals of the party you're up against. When we're buyer's agents, I always recommend if you run your net sheet as if you were the listing agent. We know how much money the seller is going to net at the end of the day. When we're buyer's agents, well, not only do we know the goals of our party, now we know the motivation and the goals of the other party too. And so if we know what the other party is thinking before they even act on it, before they even think on it, we're one step ahead of the game. My favorite thing to do when I'm negotiating for my buyer's agent is say, okay, the home is listed at 200, we're going to submit something at 180, because I know that the seller has some equity in their home, they're willing to negotiate, so I bet you they're going to come back at 190. See how often you can predict not only what your buyers are going to do, but then what the next step is and the step after that. And the more you can start to understand, okay, if this scenario happens, then B is going to happen. Or if this scenario happens, then option F is going to happen. Run these scenarios in your head to understand, okay, this is what my party wants, this is what the opposing party wants. And really what's most important is understanding the rules of the game. So really know how the transaction works, whether it's going through the buyer process, whether it's doing a listing presentation. Really understand the fundamentals and how the process works. Know where you can bend the rules, know what rules are absolutely firm and the ones that you can't break at all are really going to help you through the process of the negotiations. When you know the things that can be bent to your favor, whereas other things are hard and fast. So rule number one, always do your homework. Yes?
So for this next sheet, representing the buyer side, you wouldn't do that for every single property, right? You would only do it with ones where they're really trying to put an offer in.
Correct, yeah. I mean, unless, you really wanted to do some advanced homework and,
Right.
They have 5 showings, you're going to run 5 net sheets and, really get thorough advice, then maybe. A lot of times you don't have enough time to do that, or, you don't want to have a buyer see a home for 2 minutes, they don't like it, you spent, half an hour trying to pull the net sheets.
Right.
I would really only do it at that point when you understand, okay, the buyer likes this property and they're ready to move forward with it. Yep, absolutely. Step number 2, put yourself in their shoes. So does everybody know who that is? That's Peyton Manning, one of the best quarterbacks of all time. Why I put Peyton Manning up here is a great example of knowing not only what your party wants, but what the other party wants. Peyton Manning was absolutely phenomenal at understanding not only his offense and what every position on the field was going to do, what their routes were, what their blocking assignments were, but he also knew every single defensive role. He knew where every nickelback was going to be. He knew where every lineman was going to be. And then he could understand, okay, if they're running this formation, I'll change this play. Or if they're running this formation, I'll change that play. So he knew just as much about the defense as he did his offense. And that's what made Peyton Manning so special, is that he knew every single play, every single formation, every single player's strengths and weaknesses, not only on his team, but the opposite team as well. And that's why when he got up to the line of scrimmage, he could call 3 or 4 different audibles because he knew exactly what was going to happen if he was to run this play or this play. And so that's what made him so special. Because again, he was one step ahead of everybody else. He knew what the other party was going to do. He knew where the defense was going to go when he was running the offense. And that's kind of what you have to think about. If you're on offense, what's defense going to do? If you're on defense, what's the offense going to do? And if you understand your opponent, you're going to better understand what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, to best be able to face that. Never play a dominated strategy. Okay, so we got a game of tic-tac-toe up here. We are the X's. Okay, it's our turn. Where should we go? Top right here. And this square, absolutely, yep. So a couple things with that. One, we're assuming that when we talk about the 5 outcomes of negotiation, we're assuming that we want to win as X's and that we want the O's to lose. That's the scenario in which we want. In which case, we would play this box up here. If we wanted to win this game and have the O's lose, and we picked this box down here, we would lose the game. This box here in the bottom right-hand corner is what's called the dominated strategy. We never want to play a dominated strategy. That means the other person, what we're going to do, the other person's next move is going to force them to win. Now, let's assume that we wanted to lose the game of tic-tac-toe. We purposely wanted to lose the game of tic-tac-toe, and we're X's and it's our turn. Where are we going to go? We're going to go to this bottom corner right here. The dominated strategy would be up here. Even though it would allow us to win the game, our goal in this negotiation isn't to win. Our goal is to lose this particular game. So again, understanding what your outcomes are, what you want from the negotiation is going to help you during the strategy of negotiation. Does that make sense? Okay, cool. I always like tic-tac-toe. It's a fun game. Because you can win, lose, or tie. It's one of the few games where tying is a potential outcome. And so that's also something you have to determine. Maybe I can't win this game, but instead of losing, I'm going to go for a tie as well. So again, it's not just can I win, can the other person lose, it's maybe we can tie as well. All right. Never assume common knowledge. So, looking at this picture of this kitchen, how many of you say, this is a livable kitchen, I could live in there, this could work?
Yeah.
It could work. It theoretically could work.
Right.
How many say that it needs a complete overhaul? This is just a complete fixer-upper. There's absolutely nothing salvageable left in here. Maybe, maybe not. Exactly right. So essentially what we're doing here is, if this is, I'm a listing agent, I'm going to go in this home and say to the seller, hey seller, I want to be your listing agent. And I look at this kitchen and I think this kitchen looks ugly. Only a true fixer-upper investor is really going to buy this kitchen. And so when I market this home, I'm going to market it as a fixer-upper, as an investor special, TLC, hard money loans. That's how I'm going to go about marketing this home. When really, a potential home buyer might say, this will work. I've never had a big kitchen before. I like this L shape to it. I can make it work with the appliances. Maybe it just needs some door hardware, Because I assume that it's a fixer-upper, or because I think it's a fixer-upper, I'm assuming everybody else is going to think it's a fixer-upper. And so now I'm assuming this common knowledge that everybody thinks it's going to be a fixer-upper. So if I go to the listing agent, or if I go to the seller and say, hey seller, we're going to sell your home as a fixer-upper, but because it's a fixer-upper, and we can only offer to people who are going to buy cash, we can offer to investors, we got to set the price lower. You're not going to be able to get top dollar for it because only cash investors are going to be able to buy your home. Now all of a sudden I've cost my seller some money, because I've assumed that only investors and fixer-uppers are going to buy this home, and I've eliminated primary home buyers from who's going to potentially buy this property. I've cost my seller 5, 10, 15, 20 grand because I assume that everybody else is going to assume that it's a fixer-upper. Does that make sense there? So really what we're doing with this is we never want to assume. This is really the basic fundamental of that. Never assume that what you think is what everybody else thinks. Because again, if I'm a primary home buyer and I see this home is advertised as a fixer-upper, I'm going to say, great, I just snatched up a really good deal, and at the cost to the particular seller. So never assume pretty much anything. We want to never use subjective data. We always want to use objective data, understand the hard facts in what we're using there. Another great way, another basic to negotiations is being more creative. And so if we understand, okay, when we go through the listing process, when we go through the home buying process, if there's only one path to go down, there's no need for creativity. You never need to think outside the box. You never need to worry about, what do we put in escrow, or, how can we work this roof renovations into closing costs and things like that. If every single transaction was the exact same, we would never have to worry about being a little bit different, being a little bit more creative. But negotiations, and really the best negotiators, are the ones that are a little bit more creative. They're the ones that are able to think outside the box and understand, okay, we don't have just to go down, road A. We can maybe go down road B with a, alternate on option C and then D, and then come back to A. Those are the really good negotiators, the ones that are a little bit more creative. And one of the questions I always get, well, Nico, how do I be more creative? How do I know what's a good option or what's not a good option? Well, this is a quick, short list of ways to be more creative. One of my favorites, and there's a couple actually, the technology detox and brainstorming. So technology detox is exactly what it sounds. I love technology. It's going to help you work in your business. It's going to help you be more productive. But it doesn't help you be more creative. If you really want to start thinking outside the box, have unique, new points of view, shut off your phone, shut off the computer, turn off the TV, go take a walk outside. That's really one of the ways to open up your mind to be a little bit more creative, because the technology isn't necessarily going to help you be more creative. It's going to help you do the work once you think of the idea, but it's not going to help you be creative. Other one is brainstorming. So to me, I tell you guys all the time, there's no such thing as a bad idea. There's just bad plans of action once you have the idea. And so, if you said, I wanted to be the luxury listing agent to Tampa Bay, I'd say, great, let's go do that. That's not a bad idea. Now we just have to think about, okay, now that we have this idea, how do we get there? What do we do about that? How can we come up with more and more thoughts and suggestions to make this plan of attack a little bit more accessible, to make this work for everybody? So to me, these two are what I'm saying. If you're stuck at a point where your buyer wants this and the seller wants this, and there's a hard line there, and neither party is willing to go across what they want, take a little break, take a step back, unplug a little bit. And just think of, okay, what are some potential ideas here that could work? Even if it's, a million miles out in left field and you think it's never going to work, try it, because you never know what's going to help with that. Okay, so those are some 5 basics to keep in mind with negotiations. Always do your homework. Never play a dominated strategy. Put yourself in the shoes of the other person. Be a little more creative, and never assume common knowledge. Any questions on some of the basics so far?
would you say that we could, pitch this scenario to either our mentor or our senior, just to kind of get their take on it, since they have more experience and can shed some light?
100%. So the idea with a mentor or a sponsor or something like that is that that's what they're there for. They're a sounding board. They're never going to say, listen, that was a stupid idea. They're just going to say, let's work with this idea a little bit more. In my experience, I've seen this, so you might want to try this path. Or they might say, I've never done this, but I know a person who has. Let me make that introduction for you. So yeah, absolutely. If a good mentor, a good sponsor is never going to say, this is a bad idea. They're just going to help you formulate that idea. Yeah. So whether it's a formal mentor, whether it's a significant other, best friend, sibling, whatever it is, maybe someone to bounce ideas off of, you get a second perspective. That always helps too. Okay, so now the fun part. So now we understand some of the basics. Now we understand, okay, these are the things that we always want to keep in mind during some negotiations. We always want to say, okay, what do we want out of this? And what do we expect the other side to want out of this? And then we always know, okay, here's some things that I got to be thinking about while I'm negotiating. These are the actual ways to negotiate. So the first one, the principle of negotiation strategy. I should say that other than the kitchen sink approach, these are all other people's ideas. I didn't come up with them. So with this particular one, the principle-based negotiation, so these are based from a book called Getting to Yes. Its authors were the ones that originally founded the negotiation program at Harvard. So really smart people, they know what they're talking about when it comes to negotiations. But essentially they have 4 strategies within their principle-based negotiation that we should focus on as negotiators. These are the things that we should do while we're negotiating, in the actual strategy of negotiation. These are what we want to do. And I think number 1 speaks perfectly to the residential real estate industry. Separate the people from the problem. Deal with emotions and personality issues separately.
It's like the number 1 deal.
Oh, yes, absolutely. People love their homes. They put all this work into it. They've been there 30 years. They've seen their family grow up into it. What do you mean it's going to sell for $50,000 less than I want it to? I mean, how do you separate some of those personal and emotional effects from, actual physical realities? On the residential real estate side, that is one of our main duties as realtors, is to help them understand, yes, these are your subjective feelings about the property, but let me tell you objectively, what's happening in the market. And the ones that are able to navigate that difference between, understanding that, hey, this is, a home that's been in your family 30 years, you put $200,000 worth of renovations into it over the last 10 years, and you've seen your kids grow up into it, to, well, it's really becoming a buyer's market now, and homes are sitting on the market for 6 months or more, and, interest rates are starting to go up, and, we're going to have to offer more closing credits, How do you explain that process to a seller who thinks that their home is better than every other home in the neighborhood? Understanding here's what they want, here's the actual thing that we're trying to accomplish, which is sell their home, and separate that from what's my emotional connection to this particular home. And then the better that you can separate emotions from objective data, the better your negotiations are going to be. I still, I struggle with this every single day. This is by far the number 1 challenge in negotiations in residential real estate. Separating emotions from the objective. But the more that you can deal with that a little bit better, the better your negotiations are going to be. But point number 2 is similar to point number 1. Focus on the interests and not necessarily the positions. So the great example that they give is, let's say you have 2 siblings and they're planning a big party for their parents. One of the siblings wants to host a dinner party at their house. One of the siblings wants to have a big dinner party at a restaurant. The siblings are going to argue back and forth. I want to have it at the house. I want to have it at a restaurant. Well, if we took a step back and say, the positions are have it at the house, have it at the restaurant. But the interest is, the person that wants to have it at the house, maybe they don't want to spend a whole lot of money on this particular party. They want to be able to do it all themselves. Whereas the person that wanted to have it at the restaurant, they're like, I can spend the money, I just don't want to do all that work by myself. And so now that we really get to the point of, okay, this is what the party wants. One party doesn't really want to spend a lot of money, and the other party doesn't really want to do a lot of work with it. Now how do we compromise on that? Well, maybe instead of doing a house party or a nice restaurant, maybe we'll do an inexpensive restaurant, or maybe we'll have, a caterer come cater at a picnic or a park or something like that. Now that we separated, I'm firmly in this camp and you're firmly in this camp, let's figure out, okay, what are some things that you're actually trying to get with this? And I think that for this particular one, it's really going to be helpful understanding the motivation as to, why is your buyer buying this home, or why does the seller have to sell their home, in 2 weeks? If we understand those motivations a little bit, we're going to understand negotiation a little bit more on that. Number 3, invent options for mutual gain. So that's kind of a little bit of what we talked about, being more creative. Think about more outcomes that could potentially happen. I always say, and there's a great saying in real estate, everything is negotiable. Just because your buyers and seller disagree on the price, there's 30, 40 other terms and conditions in the contract that you might be able to negotiate on. So maybe instead of focusing on that one big number that everybody has in mind, how about we focus on some other things? Maybe inspection period, maybe financing contingencies, time frame. Absolutely. There are other things that we can negotiate on, besides that big picture one. But if we're just, strictly focused on the price, we're not going to be able to think outside the box a little bit. Number 4, insist on using objective criteria. Example, or not good example, would be fake news and alternative facts. How do we determine if I believe that the moon is made of cheese and you don't believe that the moon is made of cheese? How can we have an argument on whether or not we landed on the moon? We don't have the same set of facts in what we're dealing with. How do you understand, okay, these are the facts that you're dealing with. These are the facts that I'm dealing with. Where do we come to that middle ground with that? And so again, going away from subjective data, separating some of the emotions out from things, finding a little more objective data. Great example in my listing presentation class I did is, let's say someone has a big moose head or a deer head on the wall. They love it. It's a very close personal connection for them. But not everybody likes big moose heads or deer heads on the wall. So what I would say to them is, objectively speaking, homes in your neighborhood that are similarly sized with similar conditions don't have moose heads on the wall, and they sell, 20 days sooner. You're more than welcome to keep the moose head on the wall. Just understand that your home is going to sell for less, and it's going to take a little bit longer to sell. Now we put the ball in their court. We've laid down, okay, here's some facts that based on other homes in this neighborhood, other conditions of the sale, this might take a little bit longer for you. What do I have to do it? And if that's what you want to do, fine. We'll build that negotiation strategy around that. But just so we're all clear, here's what's going on when you decide to do that. So making sure everybody understands the exact same facts, the exact same information. Again, if you're not even understanding those basic things, it's tough to negotiate everything else with that.
And then we'll build in the room, we'll move head into the closing process.
There you go.
You want to use it.
You never know. Everything's negotiable, and you never know. You might find a buyer that really loves a moose head.
Market value based on the moose.
Right.
Oh, you made it stop coming.
Sarah, 75% of the market value.
Any questions on these 4 principles so far? I would say this particular one is great. Really understanding step number 1. How do you separate the people, from the problem? And if you're able to do that, to really go into objectively refine your negotiations.
Especially the second one's very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like you have to go in it with just like a fun, positive, very open outlook, right? Because then once it starts getting serious, then the temper starts to flare, the ego comes into play, and I feel like the value goes up on anything that you negotiate. You're like, wait a minute, it's course of hell, ain't mine.
So a couple things. So we're actually going to talk about that using it as a potential strategy. But one of the things that we are brought in as real estate agents is we are supposed to be an objective third party. You have the buyer that's very much interested in getting the lowest possible price that they possibly can, and you have the seller who's very much interested in getting the highest possible price that they possibly can. And our job is to find that middle ground for them. What is acceptable to both parties, as far as pricing, terms, and conditions, and all that. And so our job really is to be more objective than it is to be subjective. I could love your master bathroom and the renovations that you did, but objectively speaking, the renovations are 15, 20 grand above what this market can support. And so if we understand, sure, it shows great, it looks great, but you're just not going to get all that return out of it. That's our job. We are here to present that objective data between 2 opposing parties.
Self-expectation.
So the kitchen sink approach. So this is kind of one I made up. So when I negotiate, or when I'm representing a buyer, when I'm representing the seller, my objective is to literally throw the kitchen sink at them. If I'm the buyer, and in my first offer to the seller, I'm going to submit everything that I possibly could that my buyers want. And the idea behind that is, let's say, I'm trading somebody on this pile of junk right here. But all I really want out of this pile of junk is the cell phone. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, here is absolutely everything, and not necessarily tell them, hey, I want the cell phone. And so what the other party's going to do is like, well, I don't want this coconut, I don't want this shoe, I don't want this pen. Here, now you can have it. And so now the other party thinks, great, I did a great job negotiating. Look at all this stuff I got rid of. In my perspective, it's like, great, I got the cell phone. I don't really care about the other stuff in this picture. All I wanted was that cell phone. So I'm literally throwing the kitchen sink at them. I'm saying, I want, a closing date that's 60 days away. I want the seller to contribute $15,000 towards closing costs. I want a conventional loan, with 1% down payment and a 3% interest rate. That's what I'm trying to do in the first round in my negotiations. Say, look, I know I'm not going to get all these things, but because they're so outrageous, essentially, I'm going to end up somewhere in the middle. The seller's going to think, okay, I negotiated them down, and the buyer's going to negotiate up, but really, where they negotiate up to is what they wanted in the first place. Got to be careful with that, and that you can't always throw the kitchen sink at them. You can't, if a home is listed at 200, you don't want to submit an offer that's at 120. There is some limits to what you can go with. Right, yeah, you don't want to go too far low ball, and then you're just going to get straight rejection out of it, too. You got to find that common ground where it's, okay, this is low enough to where I think that they're going to provide a counter, but it's not low enough to where they're going to think it's offensive. And again, when people think, oh, I'm insulted by your offer, they weren't following step number one. They weren't removing, the emotional connection from the actual objective negotiation.
And we actually struggle with this on the builder side too. We'll get agents in and they'll be like, we want a faux blind package, we want, upgraded tile. It's like, well, no, it doesn't work that way, but, we'll give you this. So it's funny because it does show up on the builder side as well. Well,
and that's a great point too. And when we go back to understanding the basics, doing your homework, knowing how the rules of the game are played, right. And when you're negotiating with a builder, they kind of have a different set of rules on things that they're willing to negotiate versus the things that an existing homeowner is willing to negotiate on. So if you're a buyer's agent and going against the builder or going against an existing homeowner, they're going to have different negotiation strategies. I might know that the builder's a little bit more hard and fast on their price, but maybe they're willing to offer some closing costs. Maybe they're willing to offer some discounts on title. Maybe they're willing to throw in an upgraded appliance or something like that. So if I know that's what the builder is willing to do, a seller isn't going to upgrade their refrigerator. That's never something that I can negotiate for. But I know a builder might be able to upgrade the appliance. So again, if I know how the rules of the game are played, I'm going to be able to better negotiate that particular strategy. Questions on that? It's not copyrighted yet, so you guys can feel free to continue whatever you want to. The newest person in the room. So essentially the novice approach. What I find is that it is okay to go into negotiation, to go into a group and say, I'm new here. I don't really know what's going on. Can someone give me some advice? Most people are generally willing and able and even comfortable giving advice to other people. With that, you say, look, hey, I'm relatively new in real estate. This is one of my first, offers. I apologize if I get things wrong. If you think something that might work a little bit differently, I'm willing and open to some suggestions. From that perspective, the other party, they let their guard down. They say, okay, this person's new. I might have to do a little bit extra work, but I think I'm willing to help them along in this process. Whether or not you really know everything that you're talking about or really are a true novice, again, it's a way to get the other person's guard down. It's a way to really say, hey, I need some help. Can you help me out with this? And then most people are willing to give advice to people that raise their hand and say, I need advice. I need help on something like this. The flip side of this one is the fake it till you make it. To have the big ego and say, I know everything there is to know about buying a home. There's no one smarter and better than me. Look at me, I'm shouting loudest. I know exactly what I'm talking about. That strategy can work for some people. Some people are intimidated by someone with a loud microphone that is shouting on the rooftops and saying, look at me, look how great I am. Whether or not they're actually the greatest and they're the number one, that's a different story. But if they say it loud enough to where people believe that they're actually the number one, now I might be a little bit intimidated to work with that particular person too. So it's understanding, do I want to play the novice or do I want to play the fake it till you make it expert in this scenario? And most instances, I think the strategy of being the novice, being the new one, is going to actually be a little bit better for you. You're going to learn more, and the other person is going to let their guard down a little bit more negotiations. Questions on that? Okay. So the red herring or the bait and switch approach. So a great example is, let's say we are the listing agent, and our home right now that we're selling is listed for $300,000. And we get an offer that's $290,000. We say, okay, that's pretty good. We're pretty happy with that. And in that offer, the buyer says, we want to close in 30 days. And I know as a seller, okay, my seller, their primary goal is to get that $300,000. And like, if it's 30 days, 50 days, 100 days, whatever it is, they just want that $300,000. What I'm going to do now as a listing agent is go back to the buyer and say, okay, we're good with your $290,000, but instead of 30-day close, we want a 15-day close. And so now that 15-day close has now become my red herring. Now that's the thing that I'm going to anchor everything towards in my negotiation. I'm going to make the other party think that 15-day closing is most important to them, when really, to me, the $300,000 is what's most important to them. So we go back and forth in negotiation, and we go back and forth a couple times, and the buyer says, okay, fine. Talk to my mortgage rep. They said, they can pull some strings, but they can close in 15 days. And then I would say, great, you know what? My seller's kind of changed my mind. They're good if you close in 30 days, but they want you to close at 300 instead of 290. And so now what I've done, I baited and switched them. I anchored, I put the red herring at, let's close in 15 days. We're okay with the 290 price point. But then once the buyer has agreed to the 15 closing, I'm going to go right back to what the seller wanted in 300,000. Now that makes the other party a little bit frustrated. It also says, okay, well, we originally wanted 30-day closing. Maybe we can swing 300,000. Again, whether or not the strategy works or not, it certainly does, because if you are a seller and it's a seller's market, you can kind of play some games with some buyers and really make them get to that point that you want them to be. Ultimately, it's not a great strategy. Bait and switch has a negative connotation to it. People don't want to be baited. People don't want to be fooled or have the rug pulled over them. So it's not necessarily a strategy I always recommend that you use. The reason why I put an ice cream cone up here has nothing to do with this presentation, but I made you guys look at it while I was talking about it. I baited and switched you guys into thinking that this was important. It's got nothing to do with what we're talking about. We're talking about negotiations. Why does an ice cream cone have anything to do up here? So again, it doesn't feel good. Why would we want to do it?
There's no ice cream.
And the last one we'll talk about here is MISO. It's a multiple equivalent simultaneous offers. How it works is essentially this. You're a buyer, and your buyers want to buy this particular home. Instead of submitting one offer, why not submit 3? Why not submit 5? Why not submit 10 different offers from your buyer, each one with something a little bit different? Maybe the first offer is a $300,000 closing price with a 30-day closing window. Maybe the second one's a $300,000 closing price with a 45-day closing window. Maybe the third one is a $250,000 closing price with cash. There's nothing that says you can't submit more than one offer on a particular property. So why not think about, okay, what are some of the things that are most important to my particular buyer? And then I'm just going to submit all of those to the particular seller. What you're doing with that is you're really collecting information about the other side's preference. So if we submit 10 offers, and assuming we get a willing seller and a willing listing agent, they're going to say, well, we're just going to throw offer A off the table. That doesn't make any sense. Offer B and C, yeah, we could kind of work with that. D, we're going to throw off the table. And offer E, yeah, but maybe we're going to make some tweaks there. So now what we're doing is we're doing a little bit of fishing. We're trying to find out what the other side wants. And so based on the offer that we submitted, offer A, offer B, offer C, we know, okay, they didn't like anything in A, but they like some things in D, and they really like some things in F. Maybe on this final negotiation, I'm going to submit a combination of B, C, and F, and that's what's really going to get the best offer to work. And so that's how it works. Here's why it works. Because one, to me, submitting multiple offers, it makes me seem flexible. It makes me seem like, okay, I'm willing to work with you. There's not necessarily one particular thing that's important to me. It's really the ultimate culmination of these negotiations. That's what's really important to me. And so I'm showing to the seller, look, I'm flexible. I'm willing to do a couple different things on this property to make this work. Again, by collecting information on what the other seller wants, it's the same thing as doing my homework. If I know what you want, my odds of actually getting what I want go up, because I can match that. Okay, if the seller wants this, this, and this, and my buyer wants this and this, where are those two things that align that we can get exactly what we want with that. And then, as far as value of negotiations, that's more of, if your buyer thinks that you as a buyer's agent is a really good negotiator, or you as a listing agent, if your seller thinks that you're a good negotiator, you present value to them as a client as to why you're worth it and to why they could potentially use you over and over again. All right. So with that, that's about it as far as the basics and the strategy of negotiation. Any specific questions about either some of these strategies, some of these basics, or just some negotiations that have come up in your everyday transactions that you want to know a little bit more about?
It's more so just the purchase price. I rarely get side negotiations unless it's dealing with the lender, which I have. On the lending side, they'll try to build it in that way.
Mm-hmm.
But on the realtor side, it's really just the purchase price, and it's always low-ball approach. Even though the agent knows that they're justified in their selling price.
Mm-hmm.
But even though I try to coach my buyers, they still want a low ball.
Sure.
And there's like a little bit of a sting there because I know that the seller would be like, what are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
You know that this is priced right, but I have to do what the buyer wants.
Yep.
So is there how would you kind of finesse that?
Very good question. So first thing with that is that I always encourage realtors to make connections with other realtors.
Mm-hmm.
To me, it's that you're going to have better negotiations when you know the person at the opposite end of the table.
Sure.
You know, if you know, if, let's say you and I are you're a listing agent, I'm a buyer's agent. We know each other, and I can say to you, look, listen, my buyer's a jerk. You know, that they can go a little bit higher, but they're just trying to lowball here. You know, let's maybe work something out. And
Right.
so now, because I know you, we can have a little bit more real conversation about what's going on. You know, if you and I are complete strangers and I submit something that's a lowball offer, you know, you might be offended by that. You might not be able to work with one another. So one of the first things that you can do is try to develop a relationship with as many possible people in the real estate industry as you can, because you never know when that's going to come in handy as far as, you know, being able to negotiate with someone like that.
It goes over that deal too. I mean, if you have a person you throw a low ball, a phone call is almost necessary to kind of squeeze.
Exactly right. Yep. You know, and maybe that's how you get to know them and say, look, it's a pleasure to meet you. I'm excited to work with you. Just to let you know, I'm a very, particular and snippety buyer. You know, it's not, we're not trying to be offensive. We're just trying to get a good deal out of this. And so sometimes just laying that foundation can help you with the negotiation. The other part of it too is that, knowing the goals of your party. If we're the buyer's agent, and running a CMA on the seller, and we can say, look, the seller is going to net $150,000, after the sale of this particular property. Well, objectively, we know $150,000, but subjectively, $150,000 might be a lot, and it might be a little. It depends on what they're doing next. If they're looking to, if their home is their nest egg, and they're looking to cash out and spend their money in retirement, how far is $150,000 going to take you? Whereas if you've got $150,000 that you're just looking as a down payment for your next bigger home, then $150,000 is a lot of money. So really, if we can understand, okay, Mr. Ms. Seller, why are you so stuck on netting $150,000? And then we can kind of figure out, okay, if it's, they're looking to buy a bigger upgraded home, maybe we can say, hey, we have an upcoming listing that might meet what you're looking for. Or I know a builder that's building something like this. Let's see if there's ways that we can figure out what your motivation is and get what you want while still selling it at the price you want. So again, it kind of goes back to creativity, understanding what they're looking for and what are ways that we can find some implementations for that solution. All right.